So you mentioned that the new natural law theory has had some harsh critics. What have been the most effective or useful criticisms that you've had to encounter and adjust to?
Well, that's a hard question. I mean, maybe I haven't done enough adjusting. I've several times had a seminar in which we looked at all the criticisms that were out there in print for a term, actually, and trudged our way through them. But I can't say I've felt I've learned all that much. I've engaged a great deal with the critics and have appreciated their interest and so on. Usually it's a matter of clarifying what I've already said, and clarification is a constant need. They're justified in seeking clarification, but I think the basic moves that I've made and that I've made on the basis of previous work by great scholars, all that's, I think, sound, and so I'm not going to give a very satisfying answer to that.
Much of this criticism does come from other scholars who are natural theorists in a sense.
Yeah.
And so partly they seem to have a concern about the place of God in the theory. What is the place of God, if any, in natural thought, or your natural thought?
Yes, I wouldn't say actually that that's been in my understanding, the thrust of the conservative Aristotelian or conservative Thomist criticism of our way of Griset's and mine and others' way of talking about these issues. Rather, maybe that enters a bit, but rather it's been the claim on their part that we've lost touch with the idea of nature and the given. Now, of course, that then leads back to creation and as the source of nature, and thus God as the source of all that. But all my main books have finished with a whole chapter demonstrating the existence of God and arguing for the relevance of God's existence, nature, intentions, and creativity, and so on, to these conceptions of what's good and what's rationally required. So I've never felt in the slightest interested in the claim that those presenting the theory in the sort of way that I have been shortchanging God, and to a considerable degree, it seems to me that we've done more of the spade work on that front than the critics have, and certainly we've done more of the spade work on what needs to be, what should we say, recovered for the average modern student or reader. That we've done more of that than our critics have, trying to make sense of nature. I didn't in Natural Law and Natural Rights, my sort of original big book. I didn't because I hadn't actually clearly at that time seen fully the connection. I didn't bring out the connection between understanding what's good for human persons and the logical link between that and nature, the nature of the human person. I didn't have the sort of axiom or epistemological axiom, as I now would call it, that I should have had, and that all my critics or Thomistic critics should have had and don't have in their minds, namely something that Thomas Aquinas brings out very forcibly at the beginning of his discussion of his commentary on Aristotle's Ethics, namely to understand the nature of anything, any dynamic reality. You have to understand what its capacities are. And to understand those, you have to understand the sort of thing it does, how those capacities are actualized, because we don't have any access to the capacities except through seeing, observing, studying what things, these realities actually do. And you don't understand what acts are, what an activity is, unless you understand where it's headed. And so objects are understood before acts are fully understood, and they're understood before capacities, and only then do you understand nature. Whereas the critics tend to assume that we just know what the human nature is, and then from that we read off what's good, what's morally required, and so on. And so they fail to respond, I think, to the standard modern philosophical criticisms of all morality, and they fail to actually represent the classical tradition that they claim to be presenting or representing.